Well, the attack is the second major incident in Kabul within a week. 14 people were killed on Thursday when the Taliban attacked a hotel in the city. And as David was saying in his report, the violence follows recent talks between the Taliban and government negotiators. Joining me now is Micheal Keating, Associate Director of the think tank Chatham House. Good evening to you, Micheal.
Good evening.
Are the Taliban targeting foreigners?
I think they're going for high-profile attacks, you know, ones that get a lot of media attention. There have been other attacks in the last month. There was one on the 19th of April in Jalalabad, 33 people killed, 100 people injured, but that doesn't get as much attention as attacks that kill foreigners.
And sadly, it's the Afghan civilians that mainly get caught up, as we saw in David's report.
It's terrible. Something like 1,000 civilians have been killed so far this year. That's about 16% up on the same period last year. And that's not counting the ones who are injured. And this really does make a nonsense of the Taliban's claim that they are trying to avoid civilian deaths and casualties.
Right, so security is still very much clearly needed in Afghanistan, despite years and years of trying to oust out the Taliban. They're still there. And it doesn't appear that the Afghan military is coping well with the security. Is that a fair assessment?
Well, you know, it's difficult to know exactly how well they are coping, but clearly they're not coping as well as everyone would like.
There's still attacks when coalition forces were there.
Absolutely, and you know, this has a number of consequences. First of all, you know, NATO announced only last week that it's reviewing the basis upon which it will stay beyond 2016. Now, maybe that's out of nervousness about the capacity of the Afghan National Security Forces, both the police and the army. But I think the other thing it speaks to is the desperate need to bring the violence down, and really what's needed is a peace process, not just peace talks, but an actual process that is going to convert the violence into some kind of political process.
Just say there is a peace process and there is an agreement and negotiations go well. Does that mean the end of violence in Afghanistan?
Well, you know, peace processes are often marked by spikes in violence, because if they think something really is on the cards, people, you know, try and maneuver for maximum gain and maximum position, somehow as if that's going to strengthen their negotiating.
Which could be happening now.
It could be happening now. I mean, if there was a process taking place. I'm not personally convinced that there is one, even though conditions are better now for a peace process than they have been for some time.
Because one wonders who's in charge when it comes to the Taliban as well. There appears to be lots of different groups claiming to be the Taliban, but not necessarily behaving in the same way.
Well, that's true. I mean, they are internally riven, but I suspect that there is a leadership group that has taken the decision both to explore some kind of possibility for peace, but also to maintain the military pressure, especially this year, because this is the first year that the Americans and Allied troops are not in a lead operational role. So they're stress testing the Afghan National Army, the police, to see if they can cope.
How do we make peace negotiations work then?
Well, you know, first of all, you've got to have a conducive international environment, and that's the good news is that most of the neighbours, even Pakistan, don't want to see Afghanistan slip back into chaos, and the Chinese are particularly keen on that not happening, because they've got their own problems in Western China, and the Pakistanis need them. We've also got a President, Ashraf Ghani, who's much more focused on the need for a peace process than perhaps his predecessor was. And the Afghans, frankly, after 36 years of conflict, are utterly fed up. But you do need to maintain the capacity of the army and the police, which means money. And actually my biggest concern is that we're going to walk away from Afghanistan prematurely. I mean, having spent so much money, so many people being killed, you know, to leave Afghanistan because of priorities in Syria or Ukraine would be a disaster.
So you think perhaps round the table talks with international moderators as well, such as Pakistan and China? I mean, that's going to be very difficult.
Well, it is going to be difficult, yeah. And you know, the President is very clear this has got to be talks between Afghans. He doesn't want foreigners meddling in this. But you do need a supportive environment. And I must say, I think the UN has an important role here, not necessarily mediating, but certainly creating conditions in which Afghans can talk to each other in a more structured way, and also trying to create an international environment in which those talks are more possible.
Micheal, thank you very much for coming in and talking to us about that. Thank you. Micheal Keating there.